Crunchbite my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I am your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short for the final time, at least until next year. Today's episode is about the 92nd year of the award at the 96th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 2023. For our final guest, he is appearing for the 11th time, previously appearing on the very first episode, and has discussed films such as Flowers and Trees, Lend a Paw, Birds Anonymous, The Dot and the Line, The Crunch Bird, Tango, Balance, A Close Shave, The Chub Chubs, and Mr. Hublot. You know him, you love him. It's Christof. Hello, Christof.
Crunchbird, my ass!
Welcome.
I didn't plan to do this, but you mentioning Crunchbird just brought this out in me.
Yeah, that is the one that was sticking out. Like as I was reading this list, it's like, oh yeah, the Crunchbird episode. That because like I mentioned this on the Ronaldo episode we did recently, but it's just like whenever you tell people about this category, you tell them to watch Balance, you tell them to watch The Crunchbird, and then that alone will inspire them to watch every other film ever nominated, or at least want to.
I hope to.
Yeah, because I know it worked on Ronaldo, and I know you forced Fritz to watch them, and at the very least, it made him more accepting to be on this podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the final episode. It's been 2 years since this first episode has come out, and now we're here at the very end, and it's just like what a journey it has been.
And what a privilege it has been to be on, not necessarily every step, but every leg of the journey, being in every decade and talking about these films and watching these films progress and watching the category progress over the decades. It was a wonderful journey, and I was happy to be there with you.
Yeah. And it's like as someone one of the few people who can claim to have seen every single nominee in this category, like I ensured that you would be on every single decade, at least one episode, though. You were there twice in the 80s. It was just like, just keep somebody who's familiar with the category as just like a constant presence, because most of my guests, no idea what they're talking about. They're just shown 5 random films they've never heard of before and will never think about afterwards. Or maybe they will. Depends on the films they're talking about. And you also hold the unique distinction of being the only avid listener of this podcast. You're the only person who bothers to listen to every single episode. Well, look, I'm not sure if you listen to your own episodes, but for other people's episodes, you do listen to those, and that leads into my question for you today, rather than the standard one. As the podcast's most frequent listener, what stands out to you as you think back over all the episodes?
What stands out to me in what way? I mean, I love hearing your tangents with Zeta. I always love remembering when I have a bad memory for names. When your friend who didn't watch
Rory
the winner
Donovan.
of the year, when Rory, hello Rory, you're not listening to this, I guess, but hello Rory, when he tried to get an word in edgewise to tell you that he didn't watch the winner, and you were bulldozing right over him with your script and your what you've written down for the winner before he could finally confess. And you could hear the moment when he just gives up and waits for you to finish to tell you. This is still my favorite moment of the entire show. Yeah, when Brits saying, what was it? Thank God for World War II or
Oh yeah, like
something like
I
that.
miss
One,
World War II, I think it was.
yes, it's something like that. So it's these wonderful moments that stand out. Also, who was your friend who was talking shit about me because
That
she
that
was
was
finding a
Zara when
review
she
I
was talking
wrote
about
Sarah.
yeah, her
Hello,
about putting
Sarah. I
Tijuana
hate
breasts.
you. Yeah. When she was just talking trash about the Letterboxd review, and then you had to explain to her that this review was uh, written by your most loyal listener. These are, I mean, there's no podcast on the internet that is talking so often about me than your podcast. So this is what stands out to me.
I mean, it is fun to just like bring you up whenever we can. It's like people often ask like if anybody's like listening to this or things like that. And I just meant or they're like they don't want to say anything bad, but it's just like it's okay. Nobody listens to this except for Christof. And sometimes my guest will give you a little shout out and things like that. Or me and Ronaldo will just talk shit about you and just wait for the episode to come out so you can react to it. Things like that. And but yeah, it's just like we just know you'll be there. And like I was talking with Gordon about this too, how it's like you always listen to his stuff too. And so it's just like you're just the constant presence. It's just like we can always rely on you to be there. And that has also been very helpful for when like I accidentally like programmed the times in for the episode uploads and you tell me it's like, hey, where's the episode? It's like, oh shit, that was supposed to come out at 4 a.m. today. Uh,
Yeah, also when you're uploading only half the episode by accident, which happened at the beginning.
that did happen at the beginning with I believe it was Ronaldo's episode, Ferdinand the Bull. Yes, but I think it was a problem with like Anchor or something, and I think they fixed that error or whatever. But yeah, it's everything is good now. Everything works at least as long as I program the times correctly. But God, what a journey this has been. And it's just like and yes, the podcast will still go on after this, but still it's just like this is close moving on to a next chapter or closing the book and opening the second one. It's just like this is it's a big moment and it's just like I have a hard time processing it, but it's just like I think the best way to do that is just to move on forward. But before we can even do that, there even though this is a podcast about the best animated short category, there's also a best animated feature category at the Academy Awards. So to be fair to them, Christoph, I'm going to list off the names of the nominees for best animated feature this year, and I want you to tell me in just one
I'm
word
ready.
what you think
I'm
of them,
ready. I am
or
ready.
simply say
I'm
you
just
haven't
telling you,
seen it
I'm ready.
if you haven't seen it. Are you ready? You said you're ready, so I will just
Yes.
go on ahead. We first have the year's winner, which is The Boy and the Heron.
Masterpiece.
Next, we have Elemental,
No.
and then we have Nimona.
Good.
Next, we have Robot Dreams,
Heartbreaking.
and lastly, we have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Pass.
What a lovely lineup. And now we will move on to
Before we get on, can I say a bit more about Robot Dreams?
go ahead.
Because I mean, Robot Dreams is such a wonderful film, and I would rather, to be quite honest, I would rather be talking about Robot Dreams than about this entire lineup. Because before spoiling anything, this lineup we're talking about today it's not the worst we're ever talking about because I did the Chap Chap episodes with you, but it's not a great lineup. Most of these films are um, Robot Dreams is such a beautiful movie. It didn't get released officially in Germany yet. It will open, I believe, May 9th, which is a few weeks from recording date. But I caught a preview on it on Oscar Day, and almost not a day has gone by without me thinking about this movie. It's beautiful, it's funny, it's sad, it's poignant right until the end. It did to September by Earth, Wind and Fire, what in recent years only Paul Mescal films managed to do to classic songs like Under Pressure or The Power of Love. Um, I'm really looking forward to watching it again. I'm definitely going to watch it again when it's officially open in cinemas. And it's still in contention to be my pick for the best film of the year, I would say. So is The Boy and the Heron. So this animated feature lineup was really packed with those two alone. Um, and because Robot Dreams is rather episodic in nature, it almost feels like a series of short films because there's the one with the baby birds and there's the one with the summer love story. Well, winter love story, probably really. There's so many great moments, and it packs an emotional punch at the end that I did not expect to happen. It's just such a great movie, and I'm so happy to have caught it.
Hmm. Like I was lucky enough to catch it at a festival last year there, and I totally agree. It's such an unexpected gut punch, especially considering it's a film that is able to be told entirely without dialogue and stuff. It doesn't ever drag on that front and
Yeah,
just keeps the emotions so upfront, and it's just like it's a at it feels simultaneously unlike anything you've seen before, but at the same time, it's so reminiscent of so many things. It just like is able to pick out these specific moments, bring them to the forefront, and just like crush your heart so perfectly. It's just like, and I
the
remember
animation is so clear and so simple, and yet so beautiful and detailed.
exactly. It's just such a beautiful film, and I remember seeing like watching the Oscar nominations and being just so happy that it was able to get in. I had predicted it was going to get it, but still, I was so happy that it did get in. The Academy, enough Academy members did watch it and did put it in the lineup, and it's just like, God, it's such a great film, and it's like with also Boy and the Heron, and I also really love Spider-Verse. I know some people didn't. I loved it. And it's like we have three
Some
really
people,
great
as
films.
in me.
Yes, but not
And
just you.
I really loved the first animated Spider-Man movie, but the second one, it just feels so much like these Marvel live action movies that I don't care about. The thing that was special about the first one somehow was lacking for me here. But I have to say, Ro Robot Dreams would be an easy pick for the best for my winner in every year if The Boy and the Heron wasn't here.
Mhm.
Because The Boy and the Heron is also these are The Boy and the Heron and Robot Dreams are two of the best films of the year, and we're talking about a year which had a lot of really great movies, and I'm definitely not prepared to pick my favorite yet because I could also see Poor Things and The Zone of Interest and All of the Strangers. These are all films that I could see end up being my favorite of the year. And it usually takes a while for me until I make my mind up about the film of the year. I tend to say it will take 5 years until I'm certain. It takes at least 2 years until I'm somehow solidified my choice. But I could see Robot Dreams being one of the very few contenders for my favorite of the year because it's such a beautiful film.
Definitely. But I'm sorry, we can't spend this whole podcast talking about Robot Dreams. We
Such
need
a shame.
we do need to move on to our first nominee and the year's winner, which is War is Over,
Woohoo!
inspired by the music of John and Yoko, directed by Dave Mullins. This is the second nomination and first win for Mullins after a previous nomination for Pixar's Lou, as well as the first nomination and win for producer Brad Booker. This project begins and ends with Sean Ono Lennon, the son of the titular John and Yoko, and the music in question being specifically Happy Xmas War is Over, released in 1971 by Lennon, Ono, the Plastic Ono Band, and the Harlem Community Choir. Sean Lennon set out originally to make a music video for the song, honoring its 50th anniversary, but after talking with Dave Mullins, decided to expand it into a short film. The two were inspired by the history of the Christmas truce that occurred during World War I, where at Christmas the British and German soldiers would put down their weapons and fraternize for the holiday, but once the truce ended, the soldiers found it hard to attack each other afterwards. And fun fact, this was also the inspiration for the music video for Paul McCartney's Pipes for Peace. So even that is not original to this film, and not even original for a Beatle to do. Anyway, Lennon would also get together with Peter Jackson, who had previously made the Beatles documentary Get Back, in order to use his visual effects company, Weta FX, to help with the animation, though the film is also rendered within the Unreal video game engine. And to add one more big name to that list, the score is composed by 15-time Oscar loser Thomas Newman. As the film went into production, Russia had invaded Ukraine, which some may say made the film more timely, but Lennon says, "It's very sad that my parents' message of peace and love is still relevant to this day. It seems like such an old story." The film claims its look is inspired by the works of Norman Rockwell and J.C. Leyendecker, but something with the character designs is the one way they distinguish the two sides of the war featured. On one side, the soldiers have more angular designs, while the other have more rounded features. Another note, I think somehow it still doesn't have a proper distributor, with all the distribution work so far being done by either Electroleague, that being Dave Mullen's animation company, or Lenono Music. Even after the Oscar win, somehow it still doesn't have distribution. But regardless, War is Over begins with a carrier pigeon flying across a war zone, delivering a message from the general. Once the message is delivered, a soldier takes the pigeon to his tent, sets up his secret chess game, and he writes his move on a piece of paper, gives it to the pigeon to deliver. The pigeon then flies to the other side of the war to deliver the message to an opposing soldier. The game of chess plays on with the soldiers on both sides getting incredibly invested in it. As the original soldier is about to deliver a checkmate, the commanding officer discovers the chess match, flips the board over, and confiscates the pigeon. He uses the pigeon to let the general know they are about to attack. Soldiers from both sides run out of the trenches and begin to kill each other, death all around. We see the two soldiers of the chess game unknowingly start attacking each other, but once one of their pockets rips open, revealing the chess move papers, they can't kill each other. They then notice the carrier pigeon flying in, and it immediately gets shot down. The pigeon dies, having delivered its final message, a simple note from the general saying, "War is over." The song starts playing as the two soldiers get everyone to stop fighting. The final shot is of a chessboard with two opposing pawns sitting next to one another as every other piece is toppled over. Christof, what do you think of our final winner, War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko?
So, this is Christmas. And what have you done? I mean, seriously, Academy, what the fuck have you done? Maybe a little peek behind the curtain of how I do these watches. Whenever the shortlists are announced, the live action short film shortlists and the animated shortlists by the Academy, I try to watch as many of them as possible before the end nominations are announced. And then I'm doing letterbox lists where I'm ranking them myself. And usually the ones I rank towards the bottom end up nominated, and the ones I rank towards the top don't have a chance of being nominated, especially for live action. Sometimes it's also increasingly for animated. And the moment I spotted this title on the shortlist, I was thinking, oh no, they're totally going for this. I believe you slightly mispronounced the title. It should be "War is Over!" Exclamation point, because it's in all caps.
That is how it's written in my
Inspired by the
script.
music. Inspired by the music of John and Yoko. And the film is exactly as subtle as you expect a film that goes by the title "War is Over!" Exclamation point, inspired by the music of John and Yoko to be. It's horrific. It really has the message wouldn't it be nice if you were all holding hands and would stop fighting? And it pretends that this is the deepest message you could think of. And I remember first watching it, and with a title like that, you know exactly that this needle drop is going to come at some point. And when it came, I just burst out laughing because it's so ridiculous and it's so it's so obvious, like a sledgehammer to the head. It's like I don't understand how anyone can take this simplistic thing seriously because, yeah, sure, it means well, but it has absolutely nothing to say other than it's not good when people are fighting against each other. Um, the actual story of the thing, I kind of like the idea of two opposite sides of the war playing chess against each other using a carrier pigeon. There's something to it that might have been interesting to explore. I don't think it really works in the way the film presents it. I mean, the film presents it in a way that these two soldiers are fighting against each other, and then slowly other soldiers are behind them and cheering them on as they are playing chess against each other. For some reason, they are not giving them any suggestions what move to play next. It's just really these two, and no one is cheating, which is very nice of them. And this war breaks out the moment one of them actually wins the chess game. Yeah, the character design looks really kind of artless to me. One of the guys has glasses, and I thought, why don't you give him at least John Lennon glasses to wear? So there's some John Lennon connection here. But not even this thing happens. Really, the only thing that is actually inspired by John and Yoko here is the needle drop. Nothing else has anything to do with John Lennon here. Yeah, it's really this is just so simplistic. I don't like the character design. The color palette is kind of drab, but that comes from setting your film in World War One trenches. You probably can't have popping colors there. In the end, they are reading the message and they're waving white hankies everywhere to stop the war, which somehow they're succeeding at. And then they're putting a white handkerchief over the pigeon as it is dying. And you kind of feel like they should be kissing now, but they don't. And and we see that the paper reads "War is over" the moment that we hear John Lennon singing "War is over," which is no. This is really this is and the problem with it is it's really very bad, and it felt almost inevitable that this is going to win pretty much from the moment I read the title on the shortlist. And I'm not exaggerating here. I have actually been writing a review on Letterboxd before the nominations were even announced when I called this the winner. The last episode that we recorded was recorded after the nominations, but before the ceremony. And I've been talking with as much certainty about this being the eventual winner of the category, like I'm talking about it now, that with the same certainty that I have now that it has won, because it just feels like the kind of manipulative bullshit the Academy goes with. It's so simplistic. There's no bit of subtlety here. This is not what this category is about. This is bad. It's really one of the worst winners the category ever had.
So
Rant
it's
over.
So the thing is, it's like on one hand, I feel like I'm a little bit kinder to this film than you are, but on the other hand, I believe it is the worst film to ever win in this category. So it's just like it's a bit of a double-edged
Even
sword.
worse than Crunchbird?
Oh, certainly. Crunchbird, I at least get some enjoyment out of. It's just like Crunchbird is at least 2 minutes long, and it's just like it's kind of so bad it's good. And it's like there's a there's
Even
a
worse than the
reason
Chep Cheps?
it is worse than Chub Chubs. It like so I'll just say my bottom few winners. So it's like War is Over at the very bottom. Then it's Boy Mole Fox Horse, the one that won the very last year. Then we have Logo Rama, then Chub Chubs, then Crunchbird, and then Peter and the Wolf, and then I'll end it there. Johann Mouse is after that, but I'll end it there. Um, and so it's just like so I'll walk through my the way I watch these shorts, and it's like I've seen this film 3 times. First was when it was on the short list. This is the first year I've ever like gone through the short list like you and Ronaldo have for the past few years. And then so watching it that time, I was just like, okay, this is a nice little short about this little chess game. And it's like, okay, this is kind of whatever. Like it's kind of ugly, but the story's nice, I guess. And then you get to the fucking pigeon being shot down, which is just too much as is. It's like and then you get to the fucking needle drop, which is the most laughable thing to have ever like one of the funniest things to have ever been in any of these short films throughout this history because it is just so misguided. It's so out of place. It just does not fit the mood of the piece at all. And then, of course, like you were mentioning, when they open up the letter that says war is over, as they say war is over in the song, that's equally as stupid. And it's just like it makes the film so much worse than it would have been if it was just that basic ass story of the two guys playing chess and whatever. And then second watch after it's nominated, it's like again, as I'm watching it, I'm getting tricked by the chess story. It's like, huh, maybe this isn't that bad. But then again, the needle drop comes in and it makes it so much worse. But on the third watch, I'm realizing something especially bad about this film. And it's the fact that it claims that it's inspired, like the very first credit at the end of the film is music and message by John and Yoko or John Lennon and Yoko Ono or whatever it says there. Here. And the thing is, that's not really John Lennon's message. It's like if you look at the lyrics of the song, so this is Christmas and what have you done, yada yada yada. It's like the whole point of the song Happy Xmas War is Over is that it's kind of satirizing and kind of calling out hypocrisy among like Western audiences, the British public, about how they just want to celebrate Christmas without even thinking about any kind of war or hardship. It's like pretending that war is over while Christmas is going on, when no, it's not over. Things are still happening. We still need to be like out there protesting and things like that. It's like it's kind of a very angry song, and angry at the very people who are probably like making this kind of film. It's just like who just want to be like, oh, people should stop fighting. If only there was something we could do about that. Oh well. And it's just like this film is just so much more basic than that. It's just a very basic. Wouldn't it be nice, like you were saying, it wouldn't be nice if people just stop fighting. Hey, but it's just like, well, that's not gonna happen. You need to try and do something to stop these things. That's what John Lennon's message was. And I'm not a John Lennon fan. I don't give a shit about him. I think he sucks. But at the very least, I can understand what he's saying when he's like an activist. It's just like, and I don't think Sean Lennon understands his dad's message if this is the thing that he makes to try and represent that. And it's just, and I think that is the real fault of the film. It's just like it does not do anything it really sets out to do. And I pointed this out to you beforehand, and I mentioned it in the paragraph, but how the fuck are these character designs inspired by Norman Rockwell and J.C. Leyendecker? This looks nothing fucking like them. Those things look good. Those things have like very kind of realistic portrayals of people. Meanwhile, this is very cartoony and ugly, and it's in a fucking video game engine. And it's like I could see something with like a couple of the compositions, especially in the like in the montage of the chess scenes. Like there's the one famous picture of the film where it's like the guy with the glasses, he's sitting in the middle and all the soldiers around him. I guess you could make a argument that that's kind of Rockwell-esque, but that's the biggest stretch I could give this film. It's and it's mentioned in multiple interviews that I read for this, and it's just like, are you guys fucking stupid? Do you fucking know anything? And I'm not sure they do.
Yeah, I think what we can agree about, and maybe this really just comes to me while we are talking about this. The biggest fault of the film is how fucking pretentious it is. If this wasn't called "War is over!" exclamation point, inspired by the music of John and Yoko, and if it didn't have the needle drop, it would be just another war-themed short film with an kind of interesting chess theme to it. But by painting itself as this war-ending, tea-springing thing that is in a long-standing tradition of peacenik John Lennon and has something to say and is important, and you have to listen to it because it is this is what makes the film especially bad. It really brings a mediocre to bad short film with nothing to say down by pretending it really has something to say. And this is probably the biggest crime that this short commits.
Absolutely. Like I'm trying to find, yeah, there's the one quote I included here from Sean Lennon. It's very sad that my parents' message peace and love is still relevant to this day. It seems like such an old story. It's like in that sentence, he's both acknowledging that, like, yes, this is a very common message, but also the way he says it makes it feel like he thinks that he's the only person since John Lennon to be like, maybe we should stop war. And it's just like, is he just not aware of like actual activists out there or not? Like, does he think that he's on the level of like actual like protesters and people who are fighting against oppressive powers or whatever?
Yeah, and somehow the Academy was validating this by giving it the Oscar win. Why?
I guess they're just nostalgic for John Lennon. It's like there is another John Lennon themed Oscar nominee. I Met the Walrus, and I imagine that one
Yeah.
probably could have won if it weren't the fact that it is also terrible. But but
I
that
mean,
one is
this
literally
one
just an
won,
interview with
although it
John
is
Lennon.
perishable. Yeah.
But yeah, this is I after talking about 92 different years of this podcast, that's nearly 400 different films. This is truly the worst winner. This is truly one of the worst films ever nominated. And it's just I really hate like this is the fourth of the four years of the 2020s. It is truly just so frustrating how all four of the winners so far this decade have been my least favorite of the lineups. And yes, I'm not hiding that. Like I didn't hide it the last three episodes. And it's just it's it's so frustrating and it's so annoying. And it's just like yes, this is the worst of them all. It's
Yeah, and just watching it felt inevitable from the moment the shortlist was published, which is particularly regrettable.
for me, I didn't really comprehend it until my second watch, which was watching the five nominees in theaters with a crowd, and just the massive applause that this film got was just said everything to me. It's just like, oh, this is the winner. How
Mm,
tragic.
yeah.
But yeah, I really, really hope next year we have something slightly better to win and not the third year in a row where the worst film to ever win has won.
Yeah.
But you never know. There could be anything. I like again,
The-
it's April
I'm
as
not
we're
happy with I'm not happy with the trend that is currently happening in the category.
and it's like I think the thing is the major studios are starting to realize like how they can kind of hack the short film categories. Like Netflix has been doing it for a few like ever since like 2018 and like the documentary category, and they've been trying to branch out to the other ones. And it's just
Mm,
like Apple got in on the game last year, and it's just like I'm I'm a little fearful for what's in the future here.
yeah, same.
I, Is it too much to say that I kind of yearn for the years where a Crunchbird could win?
I must say, I would rather take the occasional crunch bird than, quite honestly, lineups like the one we're talking about today.
Hmm. It's just like just, and even then, it's just like I can at least say that like we are still getting like interesting nominees like in general. Like we're getting films that like have very a variety of like animation styles and things like that. We are still getting like independent films getting nominated, but the winners are important. And
Yeah,
the films that have been getting the wins this decade so far have not been very interesting films. Like we get this one, we get Boy Mole Fox Horse, we get If Anything Happens, I Love You, and the most interesting one was Windshield Wiper, which still is my least favorite of its lineup, and it was in a lineup with with a bunch of films that don't feel like winners, and so it's just it's just a weird decade we've had so far, and I really hope it gets better.
yeah, and quite often the best films on the shortlist don't go through, even though they're really great. I'm thinking a few years ago, Naval Zander, the musician, was one on the shortlist of films, which would have made for such a terrific winner, and it doesn't even get the nomination. So, yeah. And
Mhm.
this year, strangely enough, the entire shortlist for live action short was better than animated short, which is not supposed to happen.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah, the
it's not a
live
great year for the category.
yeah, live action short was surprisingly decent this year. There wasn't any, like if I remember correctly, there wasn't really a bad nominee. Yeah, and it's just like that's not supposed to happen. The animated shorts are supposed to be the interesting ones.
Yeah,
But yeah, and we got a pretty good winner as well with Story of Henry Sugar. Wait, I
I
just
don't
remembered
love Story
there
of
was a
Henry.
really bad one. There was the After in there, but still, most of them were good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the story of Henry Sugar because it's like wall-to-wall narration at 1.5 speed, but it it's okay.
Mhm. Did have you seen the other three Wes Anderson shorts? I'm curious.
I have.
Okay, were any of those better than Henry Sugar?
Yes, I liked what was the name of the last one
Poison?
in which Poison, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Poison was probably my favorite one. That and The Swan were both amazing to me. But anyway, we are off topic. Anything else you'd like to say about War is Over, inspired by the music of John Yoko?
No, let's have a look if the next short film is a bit more cheerful.
Well, no. Just, our second nominee is Letter to a Pig, directed by Tal Cantor. This is Cantor's and producer Amit R. Gilchetter's first and so far only Oscar nomination. Cantor graduated from Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design in 2016 and developed an animation technique that combines hand-drawn animation with video footage and other live media, starting with her graduate film In Other Words. From there, she's attended a number of artist residencies while teaching at her alma mater on the side. Uh, Cantor made this film in collaboration with the Hive Animation Studio, and the film is pretty much something that happened to Cantor, how Holocaust survivors came to her school to talk and the dreams she had afterwards. She wanted to use the film to explore generational trauma, how the hardships people experience are forced onto their children and their children's children, and so on, hoping people can find ways to acknowledge and talk about these experiences without forcing these feelings onto children. The film took 5 years to complete, with Cantor relying on grants and artist residencies to continue working on the film before Miyu Productions joined on the film and animation could really begin. The film would debut at San Francisco International Film Festival in 2022, winning many festival prizes before its Oscar nomination. Letter to a Pig is divided into three sections. First, we see a young Jewish boy hide from a Nazi officer inside a pigsty, with one pig specifically standing in front of his spot, potentially saving him from being caught. Part two, we see the boy now as an old man, recounting his survival story to a class of bored children. He even brings out a letter he wrote to the pigs, hence the title, thanking it for protecting him, for not judging him when he was judgmental of pigs. While one student, a young girl, seems to be moved by the story, the rest of the class does not take it seriously. After one student makes a mocking oink oink sound, the man starts ranting about his hatred for the Nazi animals and implies he did kill one of them years later. However, he says his real revenge is the school children, how he comes in every year to share his story. We then go into the third section of the film, a surreal dream sequence following the girl from the classroom as she and her classmates walk through the forest from the opening sequence and into a dilapidated house. As the other kids rummage through the belongings, the girl walks upstairs and finds a monstrous snarling pig. She is joined by other students as they all sneer at the pig angrily and begin attacking the pig and hang it from the chandelier. As the pig writhes and squeals, the children soon regret their actions. The pig begins to shrink into an innocent piglet, and the main girl takes it and places it into a sty of its own. So I have been trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to say about this film as soon as as soon as it was nominated, really, because this is such a difficult film to really say anything about, and part of it is because like I feel like every single person who watches it has questions about what the hell is going on in the last sequence. And it's just like, and specifically what the pig at the end is supposed to represent. And I'm going to share a quote from Tal Cantor just as kind of a grounding point or jumping off point. Okay, so what she says is, I found the pig to be an interesting symbol to show, among other things, the complex and volatile way in which people see and perceive the other. That's why in the film, the pig changes its form and role according to how the characters learned or chose to see it, as good, as bad, as a savior, as an evil monster, as an innocent creature. The pig embodies the inheritance of traumatic narratives, biases, and prejudices that we automatically project onto others. It is there to reflect back to us deep questions about ourselves. And so, again, as all of these films I've seen three times, once on the short list, once when they were nominated, and once right before, or earlier today before recording this episode. And this is one of the films that's changed in my perception of it. Like, in on my first watch, I found the film to be kind of hateful. Well, and it's just like it was a film that was kind of like I well, I'm basically saying I misunderstood it the first time. It is not a film that is like promoting kind of like it. I thought it was doing the exact opposite of what it was doing, where I thought it was promoting like the cycle of hatred or whatever. But on my future watches, I realized no, that's not what it's doing. It is against like how the Holocaust survivor, he talks about how like he took his revenge and how he is proud of the fact that he shares his story every year to these children and indoctrinating them essentially into hating the same people he hates. And it's just like it is very much against that line of thinking, and it wants, and like I said in the paragraph, is just Tal Cantor is trying to uh fight against that, like have a more productive way to share these traumatic stories from our past while not forcing the trauma onto the future generations. And I think that is a really important message, something you don't see often. And at the very least, it makes it a much better anti-war message than war is over. Uh, but yeah, and it's like I do like a lot of things about this film. I do really like the animation style. It's very unique, although it is a little ugly at times, I think, the way it kind of puts together live footage of people. Like sometimes it's just like eyes or like a hand, and but sometimes you see more of their face. And it's like it's strange. It sometimes doesn't work, but on the whole makes the film look very interesting at the very least. And I do the the first and second parts of the film. It's just kind of that third sequence, which is both uplifts the film a little bit just because it is the most visually interesting. I like the kind of German expressionism that goes on inside the little house, but also I think with that pig metaphor that they're doing, the very fact that she is trying to make it represent so many different things kind of ruins the metaphor itself just because it can't really be everything, even though she really wants it to be. And it's just like, it's just trying to tackle a bit too much. But still, I don't think it's a bad movie, but it's not a great movie either. I think it could have definitely been better.
Yeah. Do you think there's a Letter to a Pig explained video on YouTube?
I will
Because
Google,
it
I'll
really
search that right now and see.
it really feels like the kind of film that attracts some annoying know-it-all to tell you his interpretation of it and pretend that this is the only correct interpretation of everything that we're just watching.
Okay,
This is what I was thinking of.
so uh
I
when I
would be
type
surprised if there was, because they usually, because these kind of people are usually not attracted to this kind of film, but it wouldn't, still, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
so when I search letter to a pig, the fourth result is letter to a pig explained, but I mean in like the search like suggestions, but I don't see
Yeah.
any explained video. Oh, I just see like behind the scenes videos, interviews with Tal Cantor, things like that.
Okay. I mean, doesn't surprise me, but wouldn't surprise me the other way as well. Um, Letter to a Pig. If we're going back to the shortlist for a moment, there were two Holocaust-themed animated shorts on the shortlist this year. And I think I'm speaking for both of us when I say we can consider ourselves so lucky that we're talking about Letter to a Pig today and not about Smoke. Because
Yes.
Smoke is really, it's a short film that ends with a group of naked children being led into the gas chamber as we hear in a voiceover how a little boy narrates his own death and a sad violin is playing. It's the most disgusting tear grab you could turn the Holocaust into. And in comparison to that, Letter of a Pig is more than just fine. It's not obvious. It's not hitting you over the head with its simplistic, isn't it bad that children get killed? Yes, obviously it is. You don't need to show it to me like Smoke does to make me understand that. Um, on the contrary, it's almost so opaque in what it is showing that you indeed maybe would need someone to explain it to you or need some additional hints to fully understand what is happening when suddenly there's this huge pig and they're attacking it and it's suddenly up there squeaking in a chandelier and then it becomes a small piglet and the girl soothes it and it becomes even teeny tiny and is standing on the palm of her head of her hand
Yeah, it's
and uh, open to interpretation. And its problem is what does the pig stand for? And it goes beyond the Holocaust, and at least I would say it presents this story of the Holocaust survivor talking about his own experience hiding in a pigsty as a child, even although he had been taught all his life that pigs are these filthy creatures. And then this pig stands for something else in the nightmare or in the imagination of the girl. And I find it a bit difficult to grasp what the something else exactly is. Um, but I think it works. Thinking about it, you might find some ideas what it might be, and I certainly prefer this opacity over the obviousness of things like smoke or war is over. Um, and so it's an interesting thing to think about, I would say. You also mentioned the animation. It's this, I'm not sure if it's rotoscope animation or just looks a bit like it, and this
It is
mix of
rotoscope.
this kind of animation with the live action breaking through at several points. I also like how we go from the second part of the short film to the third part of the short film as the the girl is hiding under her desk, and the desks of the classroom sort of turn into trees, and suddenly she's in a forest. This is there are a lot of aspects to Letter to a Pig that are very interesting and thought-provoking. I'm not
Mhm.
quite sure it really communicates clearly enough what it wants to say. And I'm also not sure if it really needs to be 17 minutes long to make its point. Um, this is the longest of the short films we're talking about today, and I think there's something that could be trimmed off to maybe make it a bit clearer about what it wants to say.
Mhm. I definitely agree with that. And it's like I think from what I can tell, or from my kind of interpretation, it's that third sequence. What it really wants to be is just something more emotionally resonant rather than something you really think about. Like because I think at the very least the emotions feel a bit more intrinsic, a bit more like easier to understand, easier to hit, but it's just like the problems arise when you start to like try and unwrap what like all of these different images mean. It's like nobody ever talks about the like at the very start of the third section, like you see like a boy run away and like a Nazi officer releases the pig, and then the girl sees the officer who's like just a shadow, and then he just kind of dissipates away. Hey, and it's just like, does this mean anything? Probably. Not sure what though. And it's just like, hey, it and I think that's just kind of a representation of like the whole sequence where it's just like it has all these kind of like surreal images and it's just like these are meant to make you feel certain things, but it's just like when you try to think about them it doesn't really all connect, or at least not in a, maybe if I had enough time to like watch this film like 10 times in a row. Oh, and like try to really dig down frame by frame, just be like, okay, what does this all mean? How does this all connect together? Like maybe I would find something more to it, but I don't think I really do.
I don't really think as well. Also, it kind of doesn't help that in the second part we get so many shots of bored students because they made me think, well, to be kind of honest, I'm a little bit bored too at the moment. Please move on.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and
So,
there's
yeah,
so many little moments where they're emphasizing that the students are bored and don't take this seriously. There's like three different times when students make pig noises, and it's just like, yeah, we get it. They don't really care. Okay, get to the part where the guy gets angry at them.
yeah.
But yeah, anything else you like to say about this film, or are we sufficiently uncomfortable and want to move
Apparently
on?
not.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
we
think
are.
we're not gonna get to the bottom of it, and I'm not even sure I want to get to the bottom of it. Let's get on.
We'll move on to definitely something lighter, but still something uh emotionally rough, let's say. Our third nominee, 95 Senses, directed by Jared and Drusha Hess. This is the first and so far only nomination for the duo. The husband and wife have had quite a history before them, meeting at Brigham Young University, and have created every film of theirs together, though directorial credit typically goes to Jared. They are best known for the film Napoleon Dynamite, a smash hit on the indie scene and one of the most recognizable comedies of the 2000s. Beyond that, they also made Nacho Libre, Gentlemen Broncos, and Don Verdine, while separately, Jared directed the film Masterminds and Jerusha wrote and directed Austin Land. Coming soon is their next feature, a Netflix family movie called Thelma the Unicorn, and Jared is also directing the upcoming Minecraft movie as well. But back to the film at hand, 95 Senses has a bit of a unique origin in that the first people hired after Jared and Jerusha were its animators. The film was made as part of the MAST program of Salt Lake Film Society, which is meant to help up-and-coming animators get attached to projects. The Hesses were given 5 animators and so wanted to make a film split up into 5 parts, giving each animator a chance to shine. That's when the story came in, featuring an older man talking about the 5 senses and how they've impacted his life. From there, when it when it comes to a film that's going to be changing animation styles every couple minutes, you need something to hold it all together, and that something is Tim Blake Nelson. He narrates the film, and while the Hesses were admirers of Nelson, they were nervous he might not be into their project. Luckily, he loved the main character and had an almost intrinsic understanding of what was needed from him. So, with his voice tracked down, all they needed to do was make it, which took many years, including working through the pandemic. However, this proved to be a bit of a source of inspiration for the film. The film touches on themes of death as well as focusing on the loss of one's senses, both of which were prevalent during the pandemic, how many people would lose their sense of smell. And the Hesses also knew someone losing her sense of sight. So, despite all the animation teams being all over the world, they were able to unite and find cohesion still and create something beautiful. 95 Senses is about a man, Koi, walking us through his 5 senses. He starts with sight, talking about the beautiful things he's seen, and even sneaking a jab at smartphones, how they might be destroying our eyesight. He moves on to smell, talking about his childhood at the YMCA, the video store, and his grandmother's beauty parlor, and the various smells he remembers. Next is his hearing, or lack thereof. His father worked in a sawmill, which caused him to lose his hearing, meaning he'd play his music extra loud, which then deteriorated the hearing of Koi. Later, he would work at an auto shop, and after a harsh firing, Koi set out to burn the place down. But he couldn't hear the cries of the people dying inside. As Koi sits on death row eating his last meal, he talks about his sense of taste and the process of ordering your last meal. The last sense, touch, focuses on how he's been deprived of touch in the prison. No texture in a cell, not being able to touch another person except for the harsh guards. A touch from his lawyer sends him into a fantasy sequence about what his life could have been like. The final sequence talks about the loss of the senses as we die and speculates on more senses from our afterlife. Christof, what did you think of 95 Senses?
There are a lot of things I love about 95 Senses. First and foremost, the writing. This is by far the best written short of the 5 films we're talking about today. How it works its way through the 5 senses and slowly reveals itself as what it is, the thing it is, being a man on death row reminiscing about his life and using the senses as a way to make us understand them. Because at the beginning, really believe this is just an old man rambling about whatever. I love the animation. I love the different animation styles. I love how the different animation styles represent the different senses. There's really so many things going on for it. There's one thing about it that I don't love and that eventually prevents me from loving the film as a whole. And I'm a bit afraid to say it because I assume for many people it's one of the best assets of the film. But I just can't stand the way Tim Blake Nelson narrates this thing. This over exaggerated hill drawl, this "cell phones are changing our eyes," which goes through the entire thing. It's just a bit too much. And I just wish he could dial it down a little bit, because there's something about the way he is narrating this that I just can't stand. And this might be more a thing of my personal sensibilities, but my hairs stand up when I'm listening to this, and it kind of brings everything down, which is a bit of a shame, because I really love all the rest, and how it kind of tells the story of the character by first his impressions through his eyes and his smell, and the moment his grandmother accuses him of being a thief in a moment of very bad grandparenting, which sort of is a turning point of the film, where the first time it really gets dark and gets really dark after that. There, how when rewatching it, you see there are clues pretty much from the beginning that this man is sitting in the prison cell, as he's telling us. Uh, Although on a first time watch, even if you catch them, this is animation, so even if you catch him, you might be wondering, is this just literal, or is there some kind of other meaning behind this? So this is all very well made, but just my personal sentiment against this role that Tim Blake Nelson is speaking with is just preventing me from loving it as much as I probably should.
How dare you attack Tim Blake Nelson, one of our
I'm
greatest
sorry.
actors of all time? I'm kidding. I do understand like not liking it. I do personally love it, but I can definitely see how like his accent can get a bit overbearing. It is a bit cartoony. And but I do think like the kind of exaggerated nature of it is meant to kind of make the character a bit more endearing, a bit more goofy, get you kind of lulled into a false sense of security with him. But then as the darkness is revealed, it's like it can also keep you still emotionally attached to the character a little bit as he and it's also helped a lot with the writing of it, where it's just like even after you realize he's done something terrible, well, even if he didn't mean to do something terrible, and it's just like the little tangents he goes on just keep everything a bit light, right? And it just really makes you see this character for who he really is. And it's like, and that's just the beautiful thing about this film. It's just, and like you mentioned, the writing of this is so pitch perfect. It is maybe one of the best written films of this entire category. It's just like it is just such a perfect script. I kind of want this to be like a go-to monologue for like theater majors or whatever, just like for their graduation monologue or whatever. Just like you try and do this, see what you can do with it. Because there's lots of ways you can, I feel like, interpret the script. And like Jaron Jerusha and Tim Blake Nelson, they found one way to interpret this, but there are so many ways you can take this and alter like the intonations and things like that to bring out different kinds of emotions in this. And it's just so beautiful. And again, the differing animation styles I think really work for the most part. I don't really like the one that the style used for I think it's Smell, where it's just like showing Koi as a kid. I think it's a bit too cartoony, a bit, and it stands out in like not a really great way for me, but still. That's not a big complaint for me. It's just something to say negatively about this because I otherwise just fully love this film. It's just everything I could want from an animated short nominee. And it's like the only thing that would make this film better is if it won. Because I would love to see Academy Award winner Jared Hess, but we don't get that. Uh, but at least we get this nomination. We still get this film. This film is still so perfect and so beautiful to me. And I feel like we don't have much else to say about it because it is just so simply good, and it's just I don't think there's much we can really
I
dive
will say
into.
that I will absolutely agree with you that I would love to hear other people doing this monologue. Uh, There are some wonderful lines, like when he's imagining a different life he would have left. I love the line, "We got engaged after a tastefully long courtship." Something about this uh, is it's wonderful. It's beautiful. I just I just don't like this particular manner of speaking. So this is what sadly brings it down for me.
Mhm.
And
I,
I agree that I don't really have anything else I could say about this other than I really liked it. If it wasn't for this one aspect, I would probably love it as much as you do.
all right. I think I only have two more things I want to say. My first is I think my favorite part of this film is when he's describing like how the last meal gets made, just like talking about how much like the prisoners really love making these meals, take pride in it, and like talking about how it's like you can't actually order McDonald's sandwich. It has to be McDonald's style filet o fish or whatever. It's like those little details. I think it's like that's where the film like really where you can tell this film really knows what it's doing because it is talking about something so serious, so depressing, but is still being a bit lighthearted about it, still making you like,
And there's such great animation to that part, especially
yes.
the really large chef who's overseeing everything. It's so wonderful.
Hmm. Yeah. And I would love if this monologue became something like the human voice, where it just kind of keeps getting adapted over and over again. And yes, it's not as big as the human voice. It's only like a 10-minute monologue, or whatever, but it's just like I feel like you could get like other directors to adapt this into their own short film and see what happens. And it's like, yes, not all of them will be as great as this version, but I feel like you could even improve on this film. Like I don't know how, but you could. It's just like I want to see other interpretations of
I
it.
know how. I know how. I
I
think I
know you
suggested
think
it.
you
I
know
know
how,
how.
but you don't. And I mean besides just casting a different actor. Just like more specific ways to like interpret the
It
character and
wouldn't
things
even
like
have to be it wouldn't even have to be a different actor. It would just someone saying, "Tim, I love what you're doing. Could you try to once again dial it down a little bit?"
that. Anyway, I think we'll move on to our fourth nominee, which is Our Uniform, directed by Yagane Moga Mogadam. This is the first and so far only Oscar nomination for Mogadam, an Iranian animator. She graduated from the Art University of Tehran around 2018 and has made many short animations which she's posted to her Vimeo. However, Our Uniform is her first proper short film. The story of the film begins with Masa Amini, a woman who was beaten to death by Iranian authorities after being arrested for not wearing a hijab. The protests following her murder inspired Mogadam to create a trio of short films about her life as a woman in Iran and her relationship with the hijab, with Our Uniform being the first film. The film is meant to be an introduction to the hijab and what day-to-day life is like for an Iranian schoolgirl. It's animated in stop motion with a variety of fabrics, as well as color pencil drawings to help accentuate the clothing's ever-present nature in the life of an Iranian girls and women. Mogadam largely animated the film by herself, with some help given by her family members, and in the end completed the film within 5 months. And while Mogadam never intended to screen the film in Iran, she has talked with some Iranian women who've seen the film and says they view the film as a sad piece of documentary, reminding them of their real school memories. The film debuted at the Animeo Film Festival in Spain and won awards there as well as at Annecy. Our uniform begins talking about how every person has a different texture, different pattern they wear in life. For Mogadam, in her childhood in Tehran, she discusses how every girl is forced to wear the same uniform, same texture, same pattern, and talks about how the dress code is enforced, discusses how much she enjoys the moments when she's allowed to be free of the strict codes. So the first thing I want to talk about is the thing that everybody wants to talk about, which is, oh my God, I love the animation. I love the uniqueness of using the fabrics to animate this and the little color pencil drawings, things. And I also want to talk about how I don't understand how parts of it were done. Specifically, there's the bus sequence where it's just like I think she's traveling to school or whatever. And it's like you see the bus traveling along these different fabrics above him, and it's just like. And I read in interviews that Mogadam didn't use any like digital techniques or anything. It was literally all physically done, and it's just like all with fabrics or with the colored pencil drawings. And I'm just wondering how she got those shots. Was there like a little piece of fabric that she like lifted up or like attached to stand up and then drew on that the different scenes or whatever? I I don't know. I don't know. It's I don't know how it was done, but I still love it. I still love this film. And as for the actual content of the film, it is really like it is a great little look into this life, into this world of an Iranian schoolgirl. I do when I read reviews of this, a lot of them talk about how it is a bit simple, how it doesn't really dive that deep into the topic, which I guess makes sense because this is meant to be the first part of a three-film trilogy. He like tackling this subject. But at the same time, I do agree it is a little short. I would have liked a bit more to it. But even then, just acknowledging it for what it is, just taking what we were given, I still think it's really good. It has a nice sense of humor. Again, the animation's really great. It gives it a lot of character. And it's like it's a film that I really enjoyed watching. It's like it's just a really good film. I'm really glad it was nominated.
Yeah, I mean, it probably says a lot about the lineup as a whole that a film about the systemic oppression of women is the least depressing film of the entire lineup. We
Oh
have
yeah,
the one
God.
about about the guy on death row. We get the one about the Holocaust. We got war is over, and we got Pachyderme, which we're going to talk about soon. So, and this feels, even although it is, as I said, about the systemic oppression of women or girls, even it feels kind of uplifting because it shows how these girls are forced to wear the hijab, but it doesn't. It still gives them a voice of a young woman who uh, really has her own mind and has her own thoughts, and it doesn't want to be depressing, and it could so easily be a downer like most of the other films we're talking about here. Um, but still, as you said, as much as I like the fact how it managed to talk about this subject in this way, the real star here is the animation and how a film about clothes or the hijab just manages to do animated fabric and work so completely using buttons, using pockets, using creases in the fabric as it's telling its story. Like two of my favorite moments are when the narrator says our classes were small but populous, and then we see a creased fabric where seemingly 9 students are sitting in the classroom, and then it's flattened out, and we suddenly see a lot more pupils who are hiding in the creases. And later, when she talks about the difference between younger girls and older girls, because the hat covering they're wearing changes color, it's also implied that the older girls are older by a crease in the fabric that suggests that they're having breasts now. It's all, and they're also, I think they're also looking down and giggling a bit.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so many little details in this animation, and it's a kind of animation I don't think I've ever seen before, this way of animating the fabric that really drew me to it. Um, and also, as it feels a bit slightly, probably, I don't know, is the director residing in Iran still, or is she living
Yes,
abroad?
she
Is
is.
she an expatriate?
She is still in
She is.
Iran.
She is still in Iran, which is probably also part of the reason why this is not, with the regime that is still there, she is not making it more obvious how awful it is that this oppressive regime forces girls to wear the hijab. And she is smart enough to know that we can gather this ourselves when we watch it, and she knows how much fun she can poke at it by showing the moments where the head covering is drawn down at the front, so suddenly a hair is showing back at the back of her head, and then the opposite happens. It's really she probably has to tread a finer line than we might be aware of as a Western audience watching this. And it's really very well done. I really like this a lot. She perfectly hits the right tone as much as she can. It's it's an uplifting film to watch, and the animation is wonderful. I really love how this turned out.
Hmm. And and yeah, it's just like I do really appreciate how like there's the warning at the beginning that it's just like the film is not about it's not attacking women who choose to wear the hijab, who like view it as like a key part of their religious identity, and it's like it isn't attacking like the fabric itself, but it is just talking about what it's like to grow up in this environment and of like being forced to wear a specific thing. And it's just like, and I love how it doesn't like show it's not depicting it as like, oh, all these girls have been brainwashed into wearing this, or they're all just so miserable having to wear this. It's like it's just a part of their life. And yes, they have these little resistances to it. It's like these little ways they kind of rebel against it. Like there's the one part where she like has a few little she intentionally puts a few little hairs out, and then the teacher comes up and says, "As God will hang you by these and as punishment for whatever." And it's just like it's such a great way to show this, where it's like you can understand like how this can be harmful to a woman in this society or a girl growing up, while also not like overplaying this as like this is the most miserable thing that could ever happen to a person. And it's like there's a great balance here. And it really just emphasizes that these are people. These are regular people with emotions that just happen to be in this situation, and this is how people react to this situation.
And you kind of see that it was made by someone who knows what she's talking about and
Exactly.
pretty much is talking about her own childhood.
She literally is talking about her own childhood. Yeah. And I also just love the bit at the end where it's like where she like rejoices in the moments that she is like free to wear whatever she wants, like whether she's in her own home or whether she's traveling. And it's just like just nice little catharsis. And it's clear like this is entirely subjective point of view or subjective experience of her. If you had like another Iranian filmmaker make a film like this, there'd be different anecdotes, different motions related to it. But it's just like this is Moghadam's film, and this is her experience, and her thoughts and feelings just shine so beautifully. And I'm very glad this film was on the short list. Very glad it got nominated. Very glad I was able to see this.
Yeah. And I think as much as I like it, I think I've run out of things to say about it. So
Oh yeah, like
let's
it's
go on to other beautiful childhood memories of a young girl.
yeah, this was definitely the shortest film and the I I don't want to say the most simplistic, but it is I guess no, War is Over is definitely more simplistic,
Yeah,
but I guess
yeah.
it's just like it has the least story, I guess, where it's like it's not a plot-based thing, it's just more series of things that happen or a series of little a bunch of little scenes rather than a cohesive plot. But
It
yeah,
it it feels like it has the least of an agenda of all these short films.
yeah, maybe. It's it's weird to try and quantify things like that. It
Yeah.
anyway, we'll just move on to our fifth and final nominee, the last film we're talking about for Best Animated Short until next year, which is Pachyderme, directed by Stephanie Clement. This is Clement's first and so far only Oscar nomination alongside producer Mark Rios. Clement graduated from the MOPA Animation School in Paris in 2012, where she was taught by her eventual collaborator, Marc Ruiz. Rios. Clement had wanted to make a project about familial abuse and had drawn some images diving into that topic, but never diving further than that. Rios, inspired by her work, wrote a screenplay for the film and asked Clement to direct it, encouraging her to dig deeper into these difficult subjects and, quote, kill the real monsters. The film had a narrative based around the main character's repression of her own trauma. The film employs the narration of an adult woman reflecting back on her childhood, but it's all fragmented. Sometimes she remembers broad moments, others only specific details. Visually, the film tries to emphasize the main character as being trapped, using techniques like keeping the sky hidden or framing the main girl in ways that have her enclosed within the frame or fracture her figure or hide parts of herself. In all, it wants to portray that which we try not to see. Pachyderme is about a 9-year-old girl spending a vacation at her grandparents' house. She remembers a lot of little details, the various things neatly organized, the pachyderme tusk above the stairs, the scary faces she'd see in the ceiling, the creaking of the floorboards. She is afraid, but her grandmother assures her there's nothing to be afraid of. Still, she imagines herself melding with the flowery wallpaper in her room, hiding from what may harm her. She also remembers her grandfather, how he kissed her finger after she pricked it making fishing lures, riding her bike with him to the lake and going for a swim, always under his watchful eye. Their night drives to the forest, where he asks her to be quiet, not to move. When they arrive home, as she lies in the bed, the floorboards creak. She disappears into her wallpaper again as her grandfather enters her room. Christoph, what do you think of our final film?
I would say this. Children Must Suffer has been a long-standing tradition for the best live-action short category for quite a few years. And recently it has swept over into best animated short, and I'm not really sure if I'm happy with that. But Pachyderme is this year's resident Children Must Suffer short. And I have several problems with this. My main problem being is that there is the potential here to have a really great and powerful short. And the film is maybe 80% of the way there, but it almost intentionally ruins what it has. And mostly with its narration. I'm not sure I like the fact that this is an adult woman's voice narrating a child's point of view. But my main problem is the fact that there's so much narration here that often ruins the mood that the animation is setting up, because there are a lot of scenes that are very evocative here, like the girl disappearing into the wallpaper, or another scene in which the girl is lying in the bed and her grandfather's shadow is filling out the entire room. And these are great moments. But the film's director apparently doesn't trust the audience to pick up what she's saying here, and adds this narration, which very often is just explaining or telling us the things we're seeing already. Where I think, I did not need you to hear that. And you saying that ruins a lot of the mood that the images are creating. It would have been a much better short if there was a lot less narration. And now, Pachyderme is not the only film with a lot of narration in this lineup. 95 Cents and Our Uniform both have a lot of narration as well. But in both these cases, it feels to me like the narration and the animation are working hand in hand, and one is enhancing the other. In this way, I really feel like the narration is fighting against the animation, because the animation is trying to be evocative and the narration is very, very obvious. And these two just don't work together for me. The animation itself, there's this simple but beautiful background animation. It kind of reminded me of naive art, like, I don't know, maybe Grandma Moses or something like that. This also extends to the character animation, which makes the characters, especially the little girl that we're seeing, feel kind of bland. I don't love the way the characters are animated, even though the backgrounds are animated very beautifully. Um, it's I'm conflicted. There are many things I like here, and I'm feeling not a lot has to be done to turn this into a really powerful short film. But the way it is presented and the way the narration explains everything that's happening, or many things that are happening, just destroys a lot of the things that the film builds up.
I'm a lot kinder to this film than you are. I found this film to be incredibly successful in what it's setting out to do. I think it very successfully he like tells the story about trying to recollect traumatic memories. And it's just like going into the and it's like that's of course why the film has like the older narrator. It is about her trying to remember her own past. And it's like and well, I can definitely understand the wanting like a bit less narration. It didn't impact me at all. I didn't at a certain point, I just kind of stopped noticing the fact it was being narrated. Just kind of viewed it as like the story, as it kind of like I was reading a book or whatever, or especially because the narration's in French, I have to read the subtitles. But anyway, um, I just thought the imagery itself is so evocative, and I think the really main strength of the film, the reason it is successful, is that it doesn't ever like hit you over the head with the misery of the situation. It doesn't really have the big reveal moment that, oh my God, she's being abused. It's just these little details over the course of the film that if you are sensitive to these kind of like details, it's like you can very quickly pick up that picture, or it might take you a bit longer, not really realize it until what could be seen as like the big moment is when near the end and like when we go back to the scene where it's just like the creaking floorboards, the disappearing into wallpaper, and you see the grandfather step into the room, his shadow looming over her. That's where I feel like if anybody's lost, that's where it clicks. And it's just like, oh, he's abusing her. And it's just, I think this film, like, to compare it to some other films in this category that do similar things, something like Evalu, the live action short nominee from, I think, last year, 2 years ago, oh, where it's like, it's the story about a girl trying to find her sister. And then, like, 80% of the way through the film, she just, there's just this bit of narration where she's like, oh, by the way, she's being raped. Hey, and it's just the most the worst way you could reveal that kind of information in a film. Just like and this film contrast does it so much subtler and so much gentler, and such a more it makes it all the more powerful, well, for this kind of film. And for the animation and for the art style, I'm a little bit mixed on it. I mostly positive on it. There's a lot of great imagery in it. It like the shadow looming over her, like the shot where his massive hands are holding hers, the part where she's swimming and it's like she's being held by the lake and things like that. It's like there's so many evocative images in this film. However, I think there's certain shots in this, especially like when they're animated. This film has like this weird animation style where it's like it's not fully animated. It's not ever tricking you into thinking there's actual motion. It's very much feels like 4 frames a second or whatever, where it just like slowly changes from picture to picture. And it's like in some of those scenes, it the especially like with the main girl, she just kind of looks weird at times, like where it's kind of like I can't tell if this is a 3D animated girl or if she was drawn by hand. I'm pretty sure the whole film was drawn in 2D, like it's probably drawn digitally, but still a 2D animation. But certain shots of the girl make it look like she was a 3D render and just stands out in a weird way. Just a very small nitpick, but it's just like something that felt weird in a few scenes. But besides that, I still really love the film. It has some very powerful imagery and metaphors. I love the stuff with Tusk and how like at the very end when the grandfather dies, the tusk breaks, but then once the grandmother dies, who's been like ignoring the abuse that her husband has been causing to the young girl, it's just like the girl now grown up, she takes the tusk, tosses it into the lake, like, and it's such a cathartic ending. But yeah, I didn't love this film the first time I watched it. I thought it might have been a bit exploitative, but on my second watch and especially now on my third watch, it's just so it's the best that this type of film can be. It walks the tightrope of this kind of subject matter so perfectly, and I'm very happy it got nominated, very happy it turned out as well as it did. And it's like I wish all the films, whether animated or live action, could turn out as well as this one does, but so few ever do.
I think I actually agree with you with many points. Like I like the fact that there was not one obvious reveal that showed the abuse, but it implied it in many cases. It's just that this a lot of what you're describing to me sounds to me like you're describing the film without the narration. And if this film didn't have any narration, I would probably like it a lot as well. I would definitely like it a lot more. But it's just because it feels like I cannot let this mood that it evokes build up if I constantly hear this woman telling me what I'm already seeing. I'm missing the if the narration had more layers to it, and if it didn't just tell to us what we're already seeing anyway, I might have been a lot kinder to it. But it just feels to me like this is a film made by a director who doesn't trust her audience to pick up on what she is showing us. And that's what sours it all on me.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely understand that. And like I said, I just don't think I really noticed the narration that much and never really thought about if it was ever like doing too much or doing too little. It just kind of blended into the storytelling of the whole thing. And it's just
I
like
wish I
maybe
could ignore it as much as you did,
like
because I
maybe
believe that that's the key to liking this film is ignoring the narration.
maybe if I did if I sat down with the film specifically being like, okay, is this narration too much? Is it I maybe I'd have a more of an opinion on it, but I guess I was just more invested in the imagery and invested in the themes and stuff.
I mean, at least it wasn't Tim Blake Nelson doing the narration.
I mean, Tim Blake Nelson doing this movie would make a very different movie. Tim Blake Nelson as as a woman reflecting on her childhood abuse. It's just
Well,
like
maybe he could narrate the grandfather's side.
I don't want that. I don't want that movie. Like the
I
only
mean,
film where I feel like it's done or it portrays the abuser's side and does it well is Anya Svarda's, oh, what is it called? Like Kung Fu Power or whatever it is where it's like about a 40-year-old woman having an affair with like a 12-year-old boy. And it's just like that's the only film where I feel like it's one from the abuser's perspective and two doesn't feel terrible or it doesn't feel like it's poorly making this movie.
I would suggest Kevin Bacon in The Woodsman, which is also a very good one. Although, if I remember it correctly, it's not actually showing the abuse, but someone who is released from prison after having abused a child.
Yeah, I've never heard of that movie.
It's Kevin Bacon's best performance.
Interesting. I'm not sure I've ever thought of a good Kevin Bacon performance. Like not that he's bad and like everything, but I just like he never stands out as a good actor to me.
I would recommend it. And also, maybe back to Pachyderme. It also, in things it does very well. We see the grandfather often only in shadows, and we hear his very heavy breathing, but we also hear the narration then just as well. So this is another way where I'm repeating myself here. I think I made it very obvious what my main and biggest complaint about Pachyderme is, which is really a film that almost could have been great, but just finds a way of almost intentionally ruining it.
We we need to get like you, me, and Dashiell Silva all together to talk about the usage of words in animated shorts and just like get down like what's good, what's bad, like when it's appropriate, when it's not, and just like make the manifesto, make the list of rules.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I really like this film. You not as much. But I'm really curious to see where the rankings turn out for us. I think fifth place is obvious, but the other four are it's gonna be interesting to see where you and I turn out. Well, of course, I know where I turned out, and you know where
Yeah,
you turned out, but how we compare.
I I know what your number 5 is. I know what your number 4 is. I have no idea about your one, two, three.
All right. Well, now that we've gone through and talked about these final five nominees, let's rank them all. Christoph starts off with your number five.
War is over! Inspired by the music of John and Yoko.
Yes, mine is also War is Over! Exclamation point, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. Uh, for obvious reasons, it is just the most cliche, a quote unquote anti-war movie that is ever been made. And it's just the mindless needle drop just makes it all the worse. And God, the Academy, you are so fucking predictable and so corny. I wish you could pick better films more often. Number four.
My number 4 is Pachyderme. It could have been a lot better than it is. I just don't like the way the narration ruins it. And I believe your number 4 is Letter to a Pig. Am I right?
My number four is in fact Letter to a Pig. It has improved on this watch. Like the funny thing is, you haven't heard the episode yet, but when we talked about windshield wiper, I did like point out to Chris or to Ronaldo that like windshield wiper went from being the best of the four terrible winners, being the bottom four of this whole decade, to jumping above Letter to a Pig as being only the fifth worst nominee of the decade. But now Letter to a Pig has reclaimed its number five worst spot. Uh, and so windshield wiper is now back down along the other terrible winners. But regardless, I still think Letter to a Pig is a bit muddled in its messaging. It's trying to say a lot with just a little bit, and that can work. I just don't think the film is as specific as it really needs to be in order to accomplish that. But outside of that, I think the animation style is still evocative. It does have a lot of impactful moments, but it's just a bit messy. And it's like I would have liked it a bit cleaned up a bit more. But yeah, still not as bad as I used to think it was. But what's your number three?
My number 3 is Letter to a Pig. It is a bit more opaque than I wish it would be, but on the other hand, for a film that you could classify as a Holocaust film, it's probably a good thing that it isn't obvious. Still, as a whole, it's a bit too long. It's a bit too unclear what precisely it wants to say, and it's my number 3 in the lineup.
My number three is Our Uniform. While it is so my top three, all great movies, all films that I love, all films that if they had won, would have been very happy about. Our Uniform is simply number three here because I feel like it accomplishes the least. While it does still accomplish a lot, It still tells this really affecting story, has all these little scenes about like the little resistance against the hijab, very clearly talks about its importance in the culture and how it can be used as a tool to oppress women in Iranian society. And it's just like it's a very good film, very great animation style. Just happens to be number three here. What's your number two?
My number two is 95 Senses. 95 Senses, uh, the writing, wonderful. Animation, great. One reason why this isn't number one is called Tim Blake Nelson.
All right. My number two is Pachyderme. Uh, Jumped up a lot on like just in terms of like my overall ranking of the short films since my first watch of it. And it's just like on my second and third watches, I just got more and more emotionally invested in this film. It's just it really un unloaded to me just like how great, how well the film does this story, how tenderly it does it, and how that tenderness just makes it hurt all the more. It is just one of the best ways you can tell the story, regardless of whatever Christof has to say about its narration. I don't care. Film's still great, but it is just number two here. And what's your number one?
My number one is Our Uniform, mainly because of the absolutely unique animation style, which is very inventive and which is just a lot of fun to watch. And also because this one is not ruined by its narration, unlike two other films in this lineup. Uh, I really liked it as a whole, and altogether, it's my easy choice for the best of this particular lineup.
I think it's funny how it's just like you talk a lot about Pachyderme and 95 Cents as being ruined by the narration, but the last place movie is a film without any narration. And Letter to the Pig also doesn't have narration, but rather just has a few bits of dialogue in the film.
Yeah,
I
but
just
I
think that
mean, yeah, but what War is Over doesn't have War is Over doesn't have narration, but it has a song, and
oh
it
yeah,
has a title. It has a title. This it might be a case where the title of the film might be one of the worst things about it.
truly. Hey, and yeah, and if there's anything you hate in a short film, it's an annoying song.
And the thing is, I didn't even hate the song before the short film because I kind of get what John Lennon and Yoko Ono were doing with it, and I kind of like it I like it in a cheesy way, but just the way it is used in this awful, awful film. Ah, but you should be telling us why 95 Senses is your number one. I don't think you've done it yet.
I hadn't gotten there yet, but I we just got a little tangent here, and I'll just say I also think War's Happy Xmas War is Over is a good song. I do have it on my Christmas playlist. It's definitely better than Imagine. But anyway, 95 Senses, yes, it is my number one. It is one of my favorite nominees in this category of all time. It, like we mentioned earlier, I think it has an absolutely perfect screenplay. I love the varying animation styles, and unlike you, I think Tim Blake Nelson really brings this whole thing together in a really amazing way. Hey, and it's just like every part of it, I think, excels in a way that is very much like intended by the filmmakers and everything. It's just all so great. I really love this film. But yeah, that's the last ranking of animated short nominees we'll do until next year, which I will also bring you. We may. I think you had me promise at one point that like for every future best animated short episode, you will be the one that comes back for it. So I think I
Yes.
might keep that
Sorry,
promise.
Ronaldo. Sorry, Zeta. Sorry, Owen. I just was the first to ask for it.
Hmm. And it's just like, and yes, I imagine like the other people will be a bit upset that they will never be able to talk about this category ever again on my podcast at the very least. But I, you know,
Unless they kill me.
You know,
Also,
don't put
also,
that
I'm
on
a
the
lot
record. You
older.
don't give him ideas.
Yeah, also, I'm a lot older than you, so chances are I'm gonna die many years before you. So maybe in a few decades, you will be the obvious go-tos for this category then.
Yeah, it may maybe you'll have an untimely death. Maybe somebody will set fire to the auto parts shop you live above and not hear your screams of pain or anything. You know, we'll see what happens. But
And
anyway,
if that happens, please someone arrest Ronaldo because it was probably him.
or Zeta. I think she might just like think it'd be a fun thing to do.
That's true. Zeta strikes me as a real psychopath.
She's a real wild card. But
Yeah.
anyway, so something I've been doing for the other, like in this little victory lap of these last 4 years, where I bring back my most frequent guests. Uh, as like a final moment of the episode, we've been going back and looking at all the episodes we've done together. And so for a very extended ending segment, we're gonna go through, look, just take a brief trip down memory lane down all, what was it, 11 other episodes we've done together. And that starts with the
A-
very
And this
first
if it's my 11th episode, it's 10 others, isn't it?
uh yes, you're coming back for the 11th time. That's right. You have 10 other episodes. But yes, it starts very first year with Flowers and Trees winning, and It's Got Me Again and Mickey's Orphans being the other two nominees. And gotta
The
say,
first of our many Mickey Mouse shorts.
and the funny thing, so I had a spreadsheet where I was like charting my ratings of each year of the category, and I realized that this first year is maybe the worst year of the category just because the best film in it is just a mediocre 3-star movie for me, and the other two are bad. Had Mickey's Orphans and It's Got Me Again. And it's not a good way to start this category. But then again, Flowers and Trees itself is just so iconic. It's like I is it I don't think it is the first color cartoon, but I think it's at least the first Disney color cartoon. It's at least has that going for
It's
it.
definitely first color cartoon to ever get a nomination.
Well, yes, considering the other two were in black and white. But yeah, but even then, I still have
And
fond
I
memories.
think it's unfair to call it the worst lineup of all time, just because I mean, none of these movies are great, but none of them is outrageously bad like in other lineups that we talked about.
Yeah, but it's like those lineups with terrible nominees. Like, for example, look at this year. They still have great films to balance them out usually. He, but then again, there's still years like maybe what was it, 2009, and where it's like Logorama's in there and nothing ever really balances out. But even then, 2009 still has like a couple like 3.5 films for me. Well, this year peaks at a 3-star. So it's just the way my ratings work. And I'm sure if you charted out your ratings, you might achieve a different lowest rated year. Like you really hate 2002, was it? Right.
Yeah,
Which we'll talk about that soon
absolutely.
enough.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll move on to the second year we did together, which was 1941, the infamous 10 film year, which at the time I thought was
10
going
film,
to
only two of which were racist.
only two of which were racist. 2 out of 10 ain't bad. Um, except it is very bad. Uh, but also I remember at the time thinking that this was going to be the longest episode I ever recorded for this podcast. And I think it's like not even in the top 10. It's just like it was very quickly dethroned. And it's like, I think it's like, if I remember correctly, it was like an hour and 25 minutes. And I think my current longest episode is over an hour past that. It's like over 2.5 hours was my episode with Dashiell Silva. But yeah,
Amazing.
and I'm just looking at these 10 nominees. It's just like we really talked about all of these. We talked about how War came. We talked about the Rookie Bear. We talked about Truant Officer Donald. And this is all so long ago. Like I barely remember what we even thought about. And it's like doesn't help that this is a very mediocre lineup as well, but it's just it's rough.
I know that Rhythm in the Ranks was my number one.
I think mine was probably Superman.
It
That
must be
sounds right.
Superman.
Yeah. Yeah, Rhythm and Riggs was no, Rhapsody and Rivets was my number one. That's right. I really love Rhapsody and Rivets. Superman was my number two.
Oh, and I didn't.
Yeah, you did not like it. Again, it's my common theme of like if it has a catchy song in it, I enjoy it. And it's like Rhapsody and
Yeah.
Rivets is a fun musical short film. But moving on to our third year, which was 1957, which featured Birds
My
Anonymous.
longest gap, I believe.
Yes, I believe so. Oh, yeah, that was like what, 20 years or something?
16.
17,
Seven.
16, 16 in between, but it's like jump 17 years. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's your longest gap. But anyway, um, yeah, so this year, Birds Anonymous, One Droopy Night, Tabasco Road, Trees in Jamaica Daddy, and The Truth About Mother Goose.
Reese and Jamaica Daddy. Oh, wow.
It was so I bought a DVD of a like pretty much every UPA short that wasn't a Mr. Magoo short, aka the perfect UPA collection. But um it did include like so of course Trees in Jamaica Daddy features the iconic characters of Ham and Hattie. He or Hamilton Ham and Hattie. Um and that DVD featured three other Ham and Hattie shorts. And the funniest thing is, Trees in Jamaica Daddy is probably the best one. Like it's
Wow.
if you were going to nominate one Ham and Hattie short film, Trees in Jamaica Daddy is probably the one to go with. But of these other films, we've got Birds Anonymous, thought was hilarious. One Droopy Night, hilarious. Tabasco Road, mediocre Speedy Gonzalez short. Truth About Mother Goose, I really liked it. You were mixed. You liked some segments, but not others.
I keep trying to remember that one line from Jamaica Daddy. Like it's your responsibility to perpetuate the family tree, or something like
I
that,
think it's
wasn't it?
exactly that.
It's such a bizarre line.
Yeah, Trees in Jamaica Daddy is if anything, it's one of those really fun titles. Like I remember, I think it was Gordon. It was probably on Gordon's podcast where we were talking about like really fun Best Actress titles, or maybe it was on this podcast and we just randomly decided to talk about that. But anyway, I think Best Animated Short has some really fun titles, and Trees in Jamaica Daddy is one of them. But also, there's like the year prior with Gerald McBoing Boing on Planet Moo. That's one I really think about a lot. But yeah.
Uh,
Uh, Moving on to our next episode, that would be The Dot and the Line, a romance in math lower mathematics. Is that what it's called? Uh,
yeah,
yeah, Dot and the Line, a romance in lower mathematics, alongside Clay or the Origins of Species and The Thieving Magpie.
that's such a great lineup. This might be my favorite lineup in the history of the category.
Yeah, just three great films.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, all three are great. All three would be deserving winners in most years.
Mhm. And even
And
then,
in
Dot
this
and the
year
Line
as
is still your
well.
favorite.
Yeah. The Dot and the Line is one of my favorite winners of all time.
Yeah, and I think I put it at third. I think
Yeah, and I cannot hate you for that because Clay or the Origin of Species and the Thieving Magpie are both great winners as well. Great nominees as well.
just yeah, it's sad that this is so rare to just get solid films. Like even with just three films, getting them all solid, it's still hard to do. Like just look at the very next year. You have Herb Alpert, The Drag, and The Pink Blueprint. I think The Pink Blueprint's mediocre, and most people hate a Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass double feature. I really love it though,
Yeah, because you are you.
because I love music. I think it's just two very fun songs with fun animation, even if it may be a bit crude. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. Oh, and we're not here to talk about how Zara also shot on your opinion too. Uh, we'll move on to 1971, which has The Crunchbird, Evolution, and The Selfish Giant, which is probably the most memorable episode of the ones we've done together outside of uh the 10 episode one, just
Yeah.
because one, we had the Crunchbird. Two, I remember our collective uh freak out about the twist ending of The Selfish Giant, where it's like the
Yeah.
child is actually Jesus.
It's Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Yeah, I every time I look through my best animated short ranking and like a film I'm moving around passes by Selfish Giant, I remember our episode as this like it's become iconic in my mind for that reason. It's
Yeah.
uh but yeah, Crunchbird my ass. Crunchbird it's Oscar.
Yeah.
Moving on to your first of two 1980s episodes with Tango, The Great Cognito, and The Snowman. Another the three nominee years tend to be 2 out of 3. And here we got Tango, we got Snowman, and we got the other one.
Yeah.
And
I
yeah,
love Tango so much. Tango is such, and I just let me plug my letterbox review for Tango here because in this one I really uh, did the work and tried to the best of my capability to list every single thing that happens in Tango in my letterbox review, and it's a lot of things.
it is a lot of things. It is, how many did you count? 21 different things. And even then, you're not sure it's a complete list. You might have missed something.
Yeah, I cannot rule out that I might have missed something, but I really listed 21 different things that happen in the order that they are happening, and also at times in the way they are interacting with each other.
Mhm.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Ta- And of course, we can't talk about Tango without talking about Zbigniew Rybczynski's infamous Oscar night, where he has a very awkward acceptance speech, goes outside for a smoke, isn't allowed back in by the security guards, potentially headbutts somebody, and gets arrested.
Also, you just mispronounced his name. I'm fairly certain it's Zbigniew Rybczynski Sky something.
Yes. Poor Kristen McNichol. But I guess I don't feel bad for her. I kind of feel bad for her. At least I think she tried a little bit. Matt Dillon did not. He didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
He was stoned out of his mind, probably.
Now that's you implying that, and not implying that, saying that. I believe on the episode I was the one who was saying that. And he did not slap me with a defamation lawsuit, so it's probably true, and he was.
Or
Either that, or he somehow didn't listen to the episode,
yeah,
which is
he's
unlikely. So
he.
I believe it's just he's admitting that it's true.
I just don't think he talks to Greta Gerwig enough in order to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, probably.
And speaking of which, we'll move on to 1989, which features Balance and two other films. Those films being The Cow and The
Yeah.
Hill Farm. I love this episode simply because we were so uninterested in the other two films that we made up a bit where Greta Gerwig was our biggest fan.
What do you mean made up?
Oh, true, true, true. It's just the reality that with which we live.
We and Greta Gerwig live in this reality.
Exactly. But Noah Baumbach absolutely hates it.
Yeah,
He
I
does not
assume so.
understand. But who cares what he thinks? He's Noah Baumbach. Who gives a shit? Anyway, sorry, Greta, for hurting your
I assume
husband.
Greta Gerwig gives a shit. I would,
I think
for
she
the
would
sake
agree.
of Noah Baumbach, I will hope that Greta Gerwig gives a shit about him.
Moving on. We move on to 1995 with A Close Shave, The Chicken from Outer Space, The End, Gagarin, and Runaway Brain.
What a weird lineup.
What a strange lineup. We have Wallace
Yeah.
and Gromit. We have a TV pilot for Courage the Cowardly Dog. We have the first CG film nominated that wasn't made by Pixar. We have a Russian short film about a caterpillar, and we have the most out there Mickey short film that is also terrible.
One of my favorite Mickey Mouse rants was for Ranori Brain. Also, thank you for reminding me what Gagarin was, because I was just really thinking. I remember the other ones. What was Gagarin again? But when you mention it, yes, I remember Gagarin now as well.
Mhm. And an interesting thing to note about the end, it is one of the few films that I think is worse than War is Over.
Yeah, we're really in very different minds about the end,
Yeah, I
because
do
it was my
remember.
number two, and it would have been. It's the kind of film that I could have seen as a winner of my lineup in many other lineups, including the 2002 lineup. Definitely the 2002 lineup.
Meanwhile, it is sitting at the fifth worst film ever nominated on my ranking. Uh,
So that in theory, there is a lineup in which it would win for you as well.
if there was somehow a lineup that also included Sydney's Family Tree, Hiawatha's Rabbit Hunt, Kit Bull, and Hunky and Spunky, then yes. But I think that's unlikely, considering those films are all from different decades. Yeah, we have a 90s, a 50s, a 40s, a 30s, and a 2010s. So yeah, un
I'm now. I'm really looking forward to the episode that gets released next week, in which you're talking about Kit Bull.
oh yeah, next week at the time of this recording. Yeah, that is a fun rant I have. But you'll listen to it when you listen to it. People listening to this, uh, if they do listen to other episodes, will have already listened to it by now. Maybe, probably, hopefully. I don't fucking know. Um, but anyway, we'll move on to what's the next one? That would be t
Harvey
2002.
Crumpet.
Uh, oh, sorry, you did not get the Harvey Crumpet year. You got the Chub Chubs.
I'm still
The
mad about that.
You're not though, because we planned this.
We planned this for basically since we started the podcast. Since the first episode we did together, we planned this.
And I thought, and I made sure to write it down so we would remember to do the bit. And it was such a nothing bit, but we did it anyway, and we had fun doing it. And
Yeah.
of course, nobody else is gonna, well, the episode probably has other listeners, but I'm not sure they cared about the bit. No one's ever told me. But then again, you're the only person who's openly mentioned listening to the podcast outside of Ronaldo and Owen, but even then they didn't make it to the 2000s. But anyway, what a lineup. You were a lot harsher to it than I was because I at least enjoy
Yeah, what an
Das Rad and
awful,
Mount
awful
Head.
lineup.
And I think Mike's new car is kind of funny.
Enjoy is a strong word. Enjoy is such a strong word in relation to any of those.
But
Mike's
yeah.
Mike's new car is a deleted scene.
No, it's a DVD extra. It
Yeah, but
was
it
made
feels like a
specifically
deleted
for
scene.
the DVD.
And it feels like a deleted scene.
Okay. Yeah. And I remember being kind of surprised that I was the one who loved Das Rad, even though it's a German film, and it's just like it's your country. You should be the one who loves this movie.
Yeah, but surprisingly, I did not love it.
Oh well. You'll get him next time. We'll move on to our our previous episode together, which was 2013 with Mr. Hublot, Feral, Get a Horse, Possessions, and Room on the Broom. And that episode is
Yeah.
notable for our first positive Mickey Mouse discussion together.
Yeah, we both ended up putting the Mickey Mouse short on number one, which is something that seemed so unlikely if you listen to all other times we ever talked about Mickey Mouse.
Mhm. And part of it is just because the rest of the nominees weren't great. Like there's some fun ones, some good ones. And it's like I think
Possessions is cute.
we liked Possessions. I loved Feral. You weren't as kind to it. And the other ones are kind of mediocre, but
Yeah.
Get a
Yeah.
Horse
I
just kind of
mean,
swept its way.
yeah, it's such an easy pick to win in this lineup.
But then again, it wasn't like I guess this is the only one that's worthy of a win. It was genuine love
Yeah.
for it that also
Yeah,
happened to be the easy
we
winner.
genuinely enjoyed it both.
Mhm. And yeah, that's our 10 episodes. And I'm excited to have you back again shortly for when you, me, and Ronaldo all get together and just fully go through the entire category. You just what I imagine is going to happen is we're going to kind of go through it decade by decade and point out the films that stand out to us, like what our favorite and least favorite films of each decade are. And just kind of go through that, just a general wrap up of the category. But yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah. And one last question. Which of my friends is your favorite and which is your least favorite? Go. And I will tell them all and make sure their feelings are hurt for the ones who aren't picked.
Rory is my favorite, easily, and Sarah, I hate you.
I I figure.
That was such an easy answer. Such an easy question, such an easy answer.
Yeah, I get the thing is it's like some of my friends were like once I asked you like in DMs about like what you thought of Bean's episode, suddenly all of my friends wanted to know what you thought of their individual episodes. And it's just like I don't think I it would be right for me to ask you what you specifically thought of each of my friends and just like make a tier list of
I,
all the people I hold dear.
I would probably also have to refresh myself on some of those episodes to be really sure. I like Bean, I love you as well,
Mhm. But then there's
but not
my
as much as Rory.
but then there's also like Michael, there's Madeline, there's Byrne, there's Isaac, there's a whole bunch of friends of mine that have appeared. And there's also mutual friends. Like you're also friends with Emily. You're also friends with, of course, Zeta, Gordon, Ronaldo, the the regulars. Or is it,
Yeah.
and just like
I'd really have to refresh myself on most of your other friends to be really honest about them and have to not listen back to the entire episode, but just get myself a flavor. But I I would say I really liked all of your friends except Sarah.
okay, I'll make sure to tell her and tell everybody that. Um, but the real last question, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share or anything else you'd like to promote for this last episode?
I just want to say I'm looking very much forward to the future of your podcast now that you've freed yourself from the shackles of doing the best animated short lineups from all those 96 years that it's not 96 years. It was the 96 Academy Awards. So from all those 91 years that they've been,
This
92
is the
years, 92 years.
92nd.
From all those 92 years that's been so far, I'm looking forward to what great things this podcast is doing in the future.
And speaking of that, actually, I forgot to actually write this in my script, but so one of the things I'm going to do in the next phase of the podcast is you are having a regular segment where it's just like the Christof grab bag is what I'm calling it, where I just pick a random assortment of films and I will tell you what these films are at the end of the previous episode so I can get your reaction to them. And then we'll talk about them on the next episode we have together. And then you'll also hear the lineup for the following episode at the end of that episode and so on and so forth. So for the first episode, and that'll also coincidentally be the 100th official episode of this podcast. Uh, we are going to be talking about nursery rhymes Malaria, and La Jetée, which I think you can see what the common theme is among those three short films.
I absolutely see the common thread of these short films. These are all short films that I have rated 5 stars on Letterboxd. So you're very much choosing short films that I am going to love.
Yes, that I thought I would start this segment off in a very kind way, where perhaps in the future I might pick films that you are less fond of. Although the episodes I have picked out for you thus far are all things you, at the very least, most of them are things you like. But we'll get to those future episodes whenever we want to talk about them next. But yeah, so that'll be
Also, you just started listing those films by saying nursery rhymes, and I thought, oh no, I'm gonna have to talk about short films based on nursery rhymes. Because just when you mentioned the other ones, I realized that no, you were talking about the short film nursery rhymes, the great short film nursery rhymes,
yes. Uh
which people should really go out now and watch before we're spoiling it on the next episode, because it's just amazing what this film does in 5 minutes. And it's just 5 minutes. It's just that's such an amazing economic use of 5 minutes. It's amazing.
and I'm realizing now, like I only picked three short films for that when I probably could have picked more. And it's just like I think I might end up adding more, like just make it an even five, but it's just like, but for now it's just those three, and I'll let you know what the other two are. Of course, you have to know before we record the episode, but yes, but maybe I'll just keep it as those three because that's the ones I've announced. So, but anyway, uh, well, thank you.
I mean, you could add What's Opera Dog at least, either a What's Opera Dog or Dagamug. I mean, have you? Dagamug was not Oscar nominated as well, or
Oh yeah,
was
neither
it?
of those were Oscar nominated, but I think it's like those short films I think I'll save for like a series about like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Chuck Jones short films.
Okay.
I
What
was like
about the telephone box?
the telephone box I definitely could do. Like let me just like look up like your favorite short films. Like okay, 5 stars, short films. Um so yeah, we probably yeah, telephone box could be something to do. We could do Story of Water. Um yeah, maybe those are the two. Yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. We will add telephone box and we will also add a story of water.
Great.
Awesome. I am writing those in now. All right. Well, thank you, Christoph, for coming on the show so many times before, and I assume so many times in the future. And thank you, listener, for tuning in for 92 weeks in a row. Actually, more than that, because
You're
there's
welcome.
bonus episode. Yes, thank you, Christoph, for listening to all these episodes. But really, at this point, it's 103 weeks if you include bonus episodes, which I'm not sure if you listen to those, uh, but
I
whatever.
do. I do.
Okay. Uh,
But
but this is
they're so brief always.
yeah, usually, although the one that comes out after this one will be a bit longer because I think I'm going to end up listing my entire ranking of the animated short nominees. So,
Wow.
but yeah, that'll be fun. But anyway, this has been the short podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.